Hello everyone, I'm Nafisa Anjum. Today I'll be presenting our work, Multimodal Feedback to make real walking in virtual reality more accessible for people with and without mobility impairments. Without further ado, let's get started. So today I'll briefly cover the motivation, research gap, methodology, results and implications of this study. Now coming on to the motivation, walking in VR disrupts natural gait. Prior work has shown reductions in walking velocity and stride in immersive environments. This is concerning because falls are the second leading cause of accidental injury worldwide, and mobility impaired populations, such as individuals with multiple sclerosis or MS, are especially vulnerable. At the same time, VR is expanding rapidly in rehab, so if VR disrupts walking, we need solutions that stabilize locomotion. Now, coming on to the research gap, prior work has largely focused on standing balance rather than dynamic walking. Most feedback systems use a single modality like visual, auditory, or vibrotactile, and most studies use healthy participants only. So, what's missing is a systematic comparison of unimodal, bimodal, and multimodal feedback for real walking in mobility impaired users. That is the gap we address. Now, coming on to the contributions of this study, we conducted a large scale study with 68 participants equally divided between MS and non impaired groups. We systematically evaluated 9 feedback conditions and demonstrated strong multimodal gains with significant statistical results. And importantly, we evaluated both motor performance and cognitive trade offs. So, this work focuses on accessibility in VR locomotion. Our research questions ask: does VR reduce walking? Can feedback restore it? Are dual modalities better than single? Is full multimodal best? What are the cognitive trade offs? Answering these 5 research questions, we developed this methodology. Participants first completed baseline questionnaires, then they performed real world walking trials. After that, they repeated the same walking task under VR in different feedback conditions. We measured gait, cognitive load, and user experience. You can see the ABC, SSQ, and demographic questionnaires here. And they also received a compensation for the study. And the 9 feedback conditions are listed here. For the experimental design, we recruited 34 participants with MS and 34 without MS. The groups were balanced in age and weight. Importantly, MS participants had moderate balance confidence according to the ABC scale. Participants walked on a 12-foot gait right pressure sensitive walkway to capture objective gait parameters. They wore an HTC Vive Pro headset and a full body safety harness. We implemented 3 feedback modalities, that is, number 1, audio feedback, which was spatial audio using white noise, vibrotactile feedback using a 40 actuator vest and sleeves of B haptics, and a static head fixed visual anchor. You can see that the vibrotactile motor positions are shown here, and the static visual cues are shown here that were head fixed. Participants walked at a natural pace across the gate right mat. At the end of the walkway, they stepped off, performed a 180-degree turn, and re entered the mat and continued walking. Each participant completed 3 timed walking trials. Participants walking in real and virtual world image has been shown here. You can see that this is an image of the gate ride mat in the real world versus in the virtual world. So here the participants wore an HTC Vive Pro headset then headphones for the audio feedback, and vibrotactile vest, sleeves, and forehead array for the vibrotactile feedback conditions. So the feedback conditions that we tested were non-VR baseline, VR baseline, three unimodal conditions, audio, visual, and vibrotactile, bimodal conditions combining audio and vibro and visual, audio and visual, and vibro and visual. And finally, full multimodal feedback combining three modalities, audio, vibrotactile, and visual. Now, our primary outcome was the walking velocity. We also analyzed detailed spatiotemporal parameters such as cadence, step length, and swing time. Additionally, we measured mental load and fatigue on a scale of 0 to 10 and evaluated user experience and safety using presence, usability, simulator sickness, and baseline balance confidence. So, does VR actually reduce walking? Uh, yes, it does. In both groups, walking velocity significantly decreased in VR compared to real-world baseline. As you can see in the figure, effect sizes were extremely large. Here, VR baseline alone deteriorates the walking velocity, but providing any kind of feedback ultimately increases the walking velocity in the real world. So this supports our research question 1. For unimodal conditions, you can see that all unimodal conditions, static visual, spatial vibrotactile, or spatial auditory, all of them improved the walking velocity compared to VR baseline. However, auditory feedback produced the largest improvement, followed by vibrotactile, then visual. For without MI group, the results are pretty much the same. You can see that VR reduces the walking velocity, but providing any kind of feedback increases the walking velocity to a certain extent. And for comparing the unimodal effects, we can see that the effect size is pretty much large for auditory and then gradually towards vibrotactile. And lastly, visual performs the worst in this case. So body reference cues are stronger than static visual anchors. Coming on to the bimodal effects, dual modality combinations generally outperform unimodal conditions. Auditory plus vibrotactile was significantly better than auditory plus visual. So this suggests that combining temporarily precise body reference cues provides stronger correction. As you can see from here, the statistically significant results were high for the auditory plus visual versus auditory plus vibrotactile. But multimodal feedback produced the strongest improvement in both groups. Here, effect sizes were large compared to even the best bimodal condition. So this supports our research question 4 that multimodal integration yields maximal gait enhancement. Now coming on to the cognitive trade-offs, multimodal feedback significantly increased mental load and fatigue. Importantly, presence usability and simulator sickness didn't change. So performance does improve, but it comes at a cognitive cost. So for discussion, we can say that VR disrupts gait, which is consistent with prior locomotion literature. Secondly, auditory and vibrotactile cues dominate. This aligns with sensory reweighting theory. When visual input is unreliable, the nervous system increases reliance on body reference cues. Thirdly, multimodal feedback produces maximal gains, but it introduces cognitive load. Finally, MS participants benefited even more, suggesting external sensory support is especially valuable in balance impaired populations. So, to come to the limitations, Participants wore harnesses which may influence gait. We used a static visual anchor rather than world fixed cues. The protocol was quite long, and as we have said, the cognitive load increased, and the population was specific for multiple sclerosis only. Coming to the conclusion, VR significantly reduces walking velocity, but all kind of feedback helps. Full multimodal performs the best, and future work can include adaptive feedback systems, real-time instability detection, and world-fixed visual cues. So multimodal walking feedback can make immersive VR safer and more accessible. We thank NSF for this grant that sponsored this study. These are the references used for today's presentation. Thank you everyone for attending today's presentation. Here is our contact details. Please feel free to reach out.